Hello, dear friend. Today we are going to go into the world of mysterious and horrifying stories about female killers. Here you'll learn about 5 examples of female evil. Ready to plunge into the darkness of the stories? Then don't forget to put a like under this video and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss other videos. Let's begin our introduction to female killers. Rosemary West. The confirmed death toll for this killer alone was 10. This woman was a colleague of another serial killer, Fred. Rosemary, or Rosa, along with him made up a pair of dangerous criminals, evil and heartless. Fred and Rosa pretended to be kind, inviting young girls to their homes, promising them help with accommodation and food. But a terrible fate awaited the unfortunate victims. Rosemary herself had 8 children. She worked for a long time as a prostitute in her own house bordello. She also sold drugs there. The woman began to take a perverse pleasure in inflicting pain. The couple sadistically abused their victims, tearing off their fingers and removing their kneecaps. Together with her husband, Rosa eventually managed to kill 10 people, including her own daughter Heather. The couple buried the corpses in their own garden, plundering throughout the years 1967 to 1987. The court later found the woman guilty of killing her stepdaughter Michelle as well. It is likely that the number of victims was much higher, as Fred testified that he may have been the killer of 20 other girls who went missing during this time. A jury sentenced the killers to life in prison. After the trial, all the judges were assigned to a session with a psychotherapist, so horrifying was the revealed picture of the deeds. Bella Sorensen Guinness. This murderer was nicknamed Black Widow, on the account of which 42 victims. Her motives were greed and money, and the woman derived perverse pleasure from her actions. Bella was born in Norway, then moved to the United States. Here she became the wife of a businessman from Chicago. 2 of her daughters died strangely over time. The symptoms resembled colitis, but historians believe it could have been their mother's doing. After all signs pointed to poisoning. The children's deaths made it possible for Bella to get insurance. Soon her husband died, unexpectedly poisoned by his own medicine. The widow received insurance in this case as well. The proceeds enabled Bella to purchase a farm. But her husband's relatives decided that the death was not accidental, suspecting Bella herself of the crime. Meanwhile, she wasted no time and set about killing her lovers. She advertised, organizing love correspondence. Middle-aged men came to her home, wanting to meet an interesting widow. Bella easily lured guests to her bed. They did not realize that the pretty woman is a cold-blooded killer. All the men had accidents. In the end, the woman was able to bury 42 husbands, eventually accumulating more than $250,000. However, evil could not go unpunished. The Black Widow ended her life just as tragically. She simply disappeared. Eventually her body was found in the woods. The woman was decapitated by someone, and then burned the body. True, there were rumors that the body found did not belong to Bella at all, and she herself was able to escape and avoid punishment. Jane Toppan. In this list, this is the first representative of medicine. Jane, as a nurse, attacked her sick and infirm patients. The woman grew up troubled, thanks to her difficult childhood. Her father was insane and refused to care for her. She herself ended up growing up in an orphanage in Boston. Her foster parents were also extremely poor, which only increased her anger towards those around her. When Jane was studying to become a nurse, her professors noted her strange interest in photos of autopsied bodies. But this behavior didn't stop her from finishing her education and starting to work with patients. The patients liked her immediately. The pleasant nurse was called Jolly Jane. But in the course of her work, the woman discovered that she literally derived sexual pleasure from injecting patients with drugs, and then finding them on the verge of life and death. Jane took on the care of many patients. When they were unconscious, she touched them, experiencing sexual excitement. In 1885, Toppin toughened her experiments, transforming them into murders, and she was eventually arrested and convicted of 11 proven deaths. While in custody, Jane confessed to committing 31 more murders. Forensics proved that Mary Jane could not be found guilty due to her insanity. After her conviction, the killer spent the rest of her life in a mental institution. Eileen Wuornos. This woman had a very difficult childhood, moreover, disfigured by incest on the part of her grandfather. Is it any wonder that the growing girl had nothing but hatred for society and men in her soul? Early sexual experiences led to licentiousness. Already at the age of 13, Eileen became pregnant, and at 15 she was kicked out of the house by her own grandfather. The woman had all the hallmarks of antisocial personality disorder. She repeatedly broke the law by robbing stores with a gun. Eileen even married. Her 70-year-old spouse became physically abusive. The elderly husband after a month left his strange wife, accusing her of embezzling his money. But she found another couple, a woman named Tyria Moore. Eileen was forced to work as a prostitute, earning a living for both. But it was a dangerous occupation. One day, Eileen killed a man. According to her, he had brutally raped her beforehand, so it was an act of self-defense. The feeling of blood took over the woman. Soon she killed 6 more people in Florida. All of them were drivers with no passengers, middle-aged. They agreed to give the woman a ride and have sexual contact with her. The murder weapon was invariably a handgun. The killer received the death penalty in 2002. Countess Elizabeth Bathory. The exact number of victims of this bloody countess remains unknown. Historians say that the number of victims from 30 to 650. Legends say that the capricious woman liked to take baths with the blood of her victims, who were always young girls. The countess believed that such baths could prolong her youth and improve the condition of her skin. The woman abused her power in every possible way, leading to the death of many of her subjects. The crimes were characterized by extreme sadism. The countess herself experienced sexual pleasure. The woman forced her subjects to lick blood from the bodies of her naked victims. This addiction to blood has made Elizabeth Bathory one of the historically accurate vampires. She lured the most beautiful girls to her castle and then to her dungeon, promising them work. Her husband, Ferenc Nadisty, was an accomplice to the bloody murderer. He gave his wife the castle so that she could use her wedding gift to carry out bloody torture. Rumors of numerous murders reached the Habsburg court. The emperor ordered to deal with the bloody murderer. However, a high-profile trial did not take place. Noble relatives preferred to hide the countess in a dungeon of her own castle, where she died 3 years later at the age of 54.